Can you all see this? The cover of the new Business Week says, "You live in private equity's world." In case you didn't know that, you are living in private equity's world. And that's certainly the case in the insights business. If I just run through a couple of important deals and ownership changes, KKR now controls GfK, the German research powerhouse. Thoma Bravo just bought JD Power, and I think they're waiting for their Hart-Scott-Rodino approval to close that transaction. And they paid $2 billion for that company, and earlier this year they bought another company called Autodata, and the plan is as soon as the HSR clearance is through, they're going to merge those two companies and create an auto data powerhouse. Bain Capital has taken a 60% stake in Kantar from the research unit of WPP, and the valuation on that business was put at $4 billion as a result of that transaction. Court Square and HGGC, which had controlled Research Now and Survey Sampling International, merged those companies to form Dynata, which has been mentioned several times already. A couple of different private equity firms, New Mountain Capital and Vestar, have been fundamental in sort of the resurgence of IRI over the last decade. Nielsen, which left the warm embrace of private equity to go to the public market, may soon return to the nest. That's certainly an option being considered. And at the middle market level, Gage Capital recently acquired Schlesinger Research we believe about took a controlling interest for about $100 million. And Tailwind has had taken a controlling interest for the last several years now in LRW. And at the growth level, capital from private equity is really critical to the emergence of new businesses, such as for Spectrum Equity has taken a controlling stake in Data Central, that was very recently, which is a food and restaurant industry research business, and in Definitive Healthcare, which is a very fast-growing healthcare insights company. So today, I'm going to invite our speakers, our guests up on stage, John Almeida and Will Bihrle. And John is a general partner in SARORAS Private Capital here in New York. At his prior firm, Five Peaks Capital, John created over the course of several years a company called Reimagine Holdings, which he sold to Dynata earlier this year, and which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. And Will Bihrle is a vice president at Bain Capital, came down from Boston to join us today. Will is the US lead on the acquisition of Kantar, and we're going to talk about that as well. And so like Bugs Bunny when he was both pitching and catching, I'm now going to go over to this job. Specifically in how, was the architecture of it in your mind to begin with? Talk about what the company was, what it became, and whether its growth was opportunistic or whether whether the thesis and plan was there from the beginning.
I'd love to sit here, particularly in front of this audience, and say when we founded the company, it was two folks who had a ton of experience in the industry, knew exactly what we wanted to do, and we figured it out with a blank piece of paper, and we knew 7 years later we were going to grow the business 20% a year, do a bunch of M&A, and sell it for a great multiple. It was really nothing like that. Our original thesis was the industry had old technology. We thought there was a lot of opportunity to build. Well, let me just start even from the back, take a step back. The idea of using data, largely generated by surveys, and using that to create insights, that industry, that desire, that need it's a large business with a lot of durable demand, had gone through many different technological and process changes. If you think about how data was collected through mall intercepts, and then it went on into the telephone, online, and obviously today it's much more mobile. But the need to answer the question why, right, to get consumer insights is a durable, large industry. So our original thesis was really simple. How do we appropriate some of that demand, build a nice little business, and maybe we'll do some M&A around it, and we'll have a nice company along the way. As it turned out, we ended up really ramping up the M&A opportunity. And what our thesis became very quickly was, it's a simple product. How do we take engaged consumers, incentivize them to create data through the survey, but do it in a way that's very easy to consume and ultimately, for the customer, easy to use, right? If you talk about the idea of there being a lot of data out in the world today, it's very trite, right? We know there's more data than we can shake a stick at. And I think the simplicity of our model was, how do we make that data, the creation of it and the usage of it, really easy for our customer? I'm sure we'll talk during this discussion a bit about technology and business models. One of the things we never shied away from was service. We really felt like, particularly in the insight space, our customers did not want a true do-it-yourself product. So we always kept a real service element around the business, even if underlying the delivery model, there was technology to make it more efficient. So I'm giving a little bit of a meandering answer to your question, because like with any business that you hold for 8 years and turned out great, I'd love to chalk it up to strategic brilliance and game planning. The reality is we had a couple things go our way. We had a couple of great operators in the business, and we did a couple of neat M&A deals along the way that added to the capabilities of our company, and we found a buyer who was willing to pay us for it.
That's a good plan. Will, let me ask you about a different part of the spectrum in the insights business. Bain is buying into Kantar. It's one of the grand names in the research industry. What is the and you're not actually going to close on the deal until early next year, is that if I understand correctly? But what is the thesis going in? And talk about how you got interested, how Bain thought that this was a good opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo a lot of the same things, which is, and I loved how you opened up this conversation today by saying, we used to call this market research and now we call it insights. To me, market research is the means and insights is the end. Mm-hmm. And so we will ultimately get graded and paid based on the insights we generate, not the market research that we do. And so for us, that was the key part of the thesis, which is when you look at the landscape, insights are getting more and more valuable. The way that you actually conduct the market research is always going to change. But insights, there's even more of a priority based on this sort of the amazing amount of data that's now available to me. The light bulb moment for me was when someone basically said, market research used to be, there was no data available, and so you had to go out and survey people to generate that data, because that's how you form the insights. Now, there's too much data, and it's all about how can you take that data, digest it, and form the insights as a result of that. And so for us, when we looked at the landscape, there was no one better suited to win in that new world than someone like Kantar, because they have the scale, they have the customer relationships, they have the people, they have incredible talent across the organization, and they have the ability to, we thought, as Bain, to be a value-added partner, refocus the business and pivot it towards the right side of history and make sure that we are on the leading edge of where technology is going. And I'm absolutely going to steal that slide about the waves of innovation, because that's exactly what Kantar is going to do. And Eric has been very vocal since we announced the deal that the thesis is to take the core asset that we have, the infrastructure, and then build on top of that. To me, the question is not, is it going to be a service model versus is it going to be a big data model? It's going to be yes and yes. And I think if you're doing one but not the other, then you're going to get left behind. And so for us, what we get really excited about Kantar is you have all of the building blocks in place, and now focus and prioritize on it. And I think that's also what WPP saw, because they didn't sell outright, right? They rolled 40% into the transaction, because I think that was an implicit acknowledgement that there's something here. We want to focus it, we want to prioritize it, and so we want a value-added partner that's going to help us take it to the next level.
obviously, WPP felt it couldn't get there on its own. What does Bain bring to the party that is going to help transform, not pivot, but transform this business?
Sure, yeah. And my sense is that really, like, you know, we're investors. We claim we have all this value add potential. We have all these operating partners, and we do have all of that. The fact of the matter is, I think what we bring is a fresh perspective and frankly, prioritization. And so whatever, you know, Kantar is not one business. Kantar is 15 businesses. And it's 15 businesses within a division, which is also an agency, which is within WPP. And so the most important thing for Kantar to do might have been the 50th most important thing for WPP to do. And so I think with a new governance and a new board and a new strategic direction, we can take that 50th most important thing and we can make it the most important thing. And also we can invest in ways that we can invest in sort of a private setting in a way that a public company can't invest, who's managing quarter to quarter.
Let me mention two things, by the way. The waves of innovation from Elaine's presentation. I know people were taking snapshots of that. For everybody in the room, we will send you a PDF of that presentation, either later today or tomorrow. And also, we're a small group. This is only for this panel, because every moderator is going to do it differently. But if you've got questions, listen, we don't have to wait to the end. Happy to have anybody jump in. Just say who you are, and we'll take your question, or just take your perspective. I think, is that a yawn or a hand up?
Question.
Yes.
So I think my toxic things, I'm a data provider. What inning do you think we're in this whole data business? Like, is it still pretty early? Like, what stage are we at?
The question was, where are we in early stages of this industry? Is that
Yes, I'm
correct?
wondering, you know, how you grade this in baseball terms. What inning do you think we're in?
I think it has to be early, right? I mean, I don't think just the volume of data, you know, grows every day, and the different sources. I mean, in my, you know, part of our thesis, particularly at Reimagine, and even so with the new business we acquired, which is a, you know, sort of a healthcare-focused business around the insight space, you know, as we see the world evolving, you know, this whole marriage of structured data and unstructured data, and that probably fits, you know, I thought Elaine's slide was great. I think it's a little messier than that. I think the ecosystem is very complicated. But I think just the sheer amount of data out there continues to grow every day. And, you know, my overriding thesis around this whole space still is, how do we make that data easy to consume and easy to use? Because if you don't solve those two things, it really doesn't matter. And I sort of use Qualtrics as a great example. I don't know that they had the best product in the market, but it was sure pretty easy to use relative to the competition. And there's $8 billion that sort of agreed with me on that. And I think the sort of the atomization of the business models that will really take advantage of it will be ones that figure out ways to make that data smarter, so it can be used as more for intelligence and just, you know, for the raw, you know, the raw capability of it.
Can I ask you, in both your cases, with Kantar and with the companies that Reimagine acquired, you acquired ongoing businesses that had been around in some cases for a while. When you look at those older businesses, how do you distinguish between what is salvageable and what can be transformed into a third wave business versus what you think no, I'm going to shy away from that. That business does not have a future.
From my perspective, it's what is the value that you're actually adding? And so with Kantar, within the market research piece of it, they generate a tremendous number of reports. The question is, are those people who generate the reports, is the manner in which they collect those reports, and are those reports themselves actually valuable? Do they provide differentiated insight for companies to make decisions? And I think what we concluded, and we feel very strongly about, because of the quality of the people, of the quality of the data, and actually a belief that first-party data is key and will continue to be key going forward, yes, it's valuable. Now, I think the pivot will be you have to continue to evolve. And so when there was no competing data, when there was no other data sources around there, a 6-week study that ended up with a 100-page deck that was beautifully formatted and gave you the answer to the world, right? That was what people wanted. Now people want quicker insights, okay? In the 2-week project where you get a good enough answer, fast enough that you can make decisions real time, and then a 1 week, and then a 5-day, and then a 1-day insight is where we're going, right? And so is the fundamental building blocks of what they have, is it providing value? And then the question is, can you pivot that into something that actually will continue to stay on the forefront of creating a real advantage for your end consumers?
And are there pieces of Kantar you think don't fit that criteria?
I mean, it's hard to say because there's so many different pieces of Kantar, I'd say that we have the strong conviction that each of those pieces is valuable in their own way. That doesn't mean that we can't augment them in certain ways by adding more technology, whether that's organically or through M&A, or basically repivoting sort of some of the systems and processes that we do there.
John, you, as I was saying before, when you were putting Reimagine together, you looked at a lot of companies, I'm sure. What was your decision point about what was worth bringing on board and what was not?
Yeah. So, I'll create the distinction at Reimagine where we were trying to build things that fit within a platform. We were certainly willing to look at sort of what I would categorize as more sort of legacy assets, because we were willing to buy things that added something very specific to the platform. As sort of a new investor, and we just acquired a business, a small business in this space, but one with a lot of secular tailwinds, automated research, healthcare focus, micro surveys, short sort of things that are easy to do quickly. So if you talk about this world of quicker and faster and cheaper, it checks all of those things. I think for where I sit, wanting to retool things that just have legacy assets, that's a harder bet, but it has to be captured in valuation. But the other piece that I think is important, and I really believe that the winners here, these are technology-enabled service models, right? I still think that most clients want that service element to them, but you still need technology underlying it to create the sort of operating leverage. So I'm giving you a bit of a mishmash answer to it because I think it sort of depends. But look, I'm firmly a believer that if you look at the biggest companies in this space, whether it's WPP and Kantar, whether it's Dynade in the data creation space, these are big, strong, powerful companies, global scale, able to do things for global customers that no one else can do. And people who discount them, they do it at their own peril because they're all owned by smart people, and they may go through some twists and turns, but they'll figure these things out. So I tend to be, even though we've tended to compete against the bigger guys and done so reasonably well, we've generally thought that the big players, because of the sheer immensity of assets they have and the global scale, they're going to be forces to be contended with, and they'll figure out how to take advantage of sort of what's going to happen during the next phase of the insights industry.
I'm going to ask a question for the audience as well as the panelists. Is there still a role out there for something that's not quicker, faster, and cheaper? Or is that the way the whole industry is going, in your view? Anybody want to?
Yeah, I mean, there will be certain types of projects.
When we get you a microphone, go up.
I think there will be certain types of projects that are just too large scale to use a really fast turnaround, agile type of customer feedback technology. It's very interesting, and the analogy I would use is in the music industry, people have actually sacrificed quality for convenience, right? So the quality of the sound has gone way down, but people don't care. They'll listen to the music on YouTube through their earbuds, and so the actual experience has actually gone way down, but people are happy to make that trade-off. It's the same thing is happening, in insights. But so that's one thing. The other thing I also do think I'm interested in your thoughts is as the insights feed marketing is becoming continuous optimization. It's not like you developed a campaign and then you measured and then you 12 months later, right? It's as that happens more and more, some of the techniques that will be used will be, they won't necessarily be faster, cheaper, et cetera, because it's already continuous optimization. So now you're looking for, I want the real answer. I want the real insight, what's working, what's not working. And I'm willing to wait because we're throwing things against the wall all the time, but we don't know why it's working. So that's just thought.
Let me, as a banker, and we meet with private equity teams all the time, in this space, when we ask potential investors or strategics as well, what is it you're looking for? It's always, we want subscription services. We want very little human touch. But you're arguing against that, both of you, that you think that there is still an important place for human touch.
I mean, certainly where the valuations have gone for, if you describe your business model as SaaS, or you pivot your business model to SaaS, whether it is or not, you can expect 3 more turns, right, on the purchase price of it. And I think that in some ways, we as an industry have created this sort of false dichotomy, which is you're either old world, stodgy, traditional, slow-moving, or you're the quick, nimble software provider who can give you insights automatically, and it's self-serve, and there's no sales force because you just find the product somehow on a website and you just download it, and all of a sudden the growth is rapid. To me, it isn't one or the other. It has to be both, right? And so when you think about this question about these, is there a place for these bigger projects? Bain, McKinsey, and BCG are themselves, these consulting firms, they've never been bigger, they've never been more profitable, they've never been growing faster, because people still value what are these huge, massive engagements to form insight and generate that. And so I don't think you can be one or the other, I think you have to be both. And if you pigeonhole yourself into one or the other, I think it's gonna be tough. I think that there's a tremendous number of really interesting disruptive companies that are coming into the marketplace that are using data in really innovative ways. And the problem that they will face is they're sort of shouting into a crowd and they're trying to be heard. And how did they get discovered? And how did they gain traction? And how do people discover them? And so I think what we feel very strongly about is taking the strong building blocks that Kantar has and marrying that with some of these newer, just more disruptive, nimbler products can be a really powerful combination for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, one of the things that we learned during our 8 years of owning Reimagine, and then also in our diligence of on InCrowd, which is our new platform, is that almost without fail, all of the customers, when we talked to them, said something along the lines of, I used to have this many people in my department, now I have this many people. The sheer amount of data I need to process and work with has gone from here to here. Every decision I make, I need data to validate it. So you put all that together, and in almost every case, they need help. At least that we've spoken to, we had a do-it-yourself product at Reimagine. None of our customers wanted it. We would talk about do it together, so they could do certain things, but we would help them with others. And at InCrowd, our customers, half of them have said to us, if you couldn't do X for us, we can't use you, which is really interesting. And our customers are big pharma, big life sciences companies that have large marketing budgets, departments, et cetera, but the sheer number of people they have working on these things has shrunk dramatically. So I still am a believer that service element, and again, you want it to be tech-enabled, so it's not weeks of times to process analysis and insight, but having some human touch actually creates more customer resilience than just a software product in some cases. So, and again, I'd agree with Will. I don't think it's either or. When we ever sell our company, we're certainly going to be a subscription business, and we're going to try to get that multiple. But I think the right answer for the customer, which is frankly the way we look at it, is a combination of the two.
I think the winners going forward will be the companies that best prove a demonstrable ROI on that investment. And I think that's what Google and Facebook in the advertising space, and we can probably learn a lot from them and apply it to the marketing space, have been so successful at, which is you can put up a billboard and you sort of hope and pray that it works. And there's ways you can test it, but they're not perfect. What Google figured out really successfully was you can click this and we'll tell you exactly that that person went and bought this product, and so the return on your investment was this. And so when someone who's controlling a budget is sitting there, there's this gray lever over here, which I don't know what the return is, or I can push it here and I know I'm getting a positive ROI. And so I think that's where the marketing industry also has to pivot to, which is if you pay us this amount of money, we can guarantee you that you're going to get this return on your investment and that's going to be a successful choice for you.
Way in the back.
Hi, Josh Crandall from NetPop Research. I have a hard time thinking that bigger, faster, cheaper is doing our industry a service in that, sure, we could do it faster, and the data that comes in is dirtier. It's not providing the correct signals that are going to end up in a quality, insightful output. And what's happening is that I think our industry is actually being pulled apart by bigger, faster, cheaper, and DIY by providing tools without the education and the experience and the mentoring that is required for the younger employees to actually understand what they're even interpreting. And so it's difficult to hear that bigger, faster, cheaper is the way that we're actually pushing this industry forward. So I mean, my question is how do Kantar and Reimagine actually ensure that the data and the insights that are being generated are those that are actually going to be the most insightful and beneficial to the clients?
I mean, my perspective on that is, I would go back to the previous comment, which is you can release a bigger, faster product, and if it doesn't work, if you don't get the appropriate return on your investment, people will abandon it. And I think that people are smart enough in the industry and getting smarter every day to realize that spending a bunch of money on something that doesn't actually flow to the bottom line and generate real returns, they're going to pivot away from it. And so you can have all the bells and whistles on a product that claims to have all the buzzwords, the big data, machine learning, AI, everything. But if it doesn't actually result in sort of an improvement, then I think people are going to find the solution that works. And so I mean, I think it has to be the right solution for the right customer. And I think Kantar, what they've successfully done is they have the traditional market research tool, and then they're rolling out this product called Holistic Brand Guidance, which is a lighter, faster, quicker insight tool. And it works for some customers who want that, who need that product, and it doesn't work for others who want the more traditional sort of full service offering. But being able to go to market with both of those and actually providing the team with a toolkit that says, here's the product if you're looking for this, and here's the product if you're looking for that, that's going to be a better outcome for everyone in the industry.
Yeah. I think there's a place for both. And to Will's point about first-party data is great. And if you think about a GDPR-type world that we're all going to live in, I think it's actually an advantage. But first-party data, to me, is important if it's engaged first-party data, right? If you have big customer databases that don't respond or big consumer panels that don't respond, that's not of a whole lot of value. And I do think, having, from my Reimagine experience and also with our new business, the one thing we've noted is getting people to sit and put a lot of time into long surveys, for example. There's a diminishing return to that in I think, today's world, because people don't have the time to sit in front of a computer for 90 minutes and fill a survey out, and that's where you get quality problems. So there is that balance. There are some problems, I agree 100%. You need more rigorous, intensive data to get at the right answer. But there are also other problems where less data that can be done quickly with engaged first parties probably gets you to 90% of the answer. And I think there's a place for that in the market as well.
We only have a few minutes left. I just wanted to pivot back to the role of private equity in the industry. And a very simple question. Now that we're living in private equity's world, as Business Week says we are, in our industry here, given the deals that have happened over the last few years, with private equity essentially taking over almost all of the large companies, except for maybe Ipsos right now, is there a downside to this? I know you're in the industry, your career.
No.
I mean, I'd argue the bigger companies, private equity is a good vehicle, and I can say this without sounding too self-serving, since I'm not at one of those firms, but I feel like for the bigger businesses, the Cantars, the WPPs, the Dynadas, private equity is a great outcome because there are things they need to do that can only be done under private ownership. And while businesses that we're looking to buy generally compete against some of the bigger ones, from an industry point of view, we want them to be successful. Not too successful, we want them to be successful. Because you need to have your industry bellwethers healthy in order for the overall industry to continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that question, not to be facetious, is if you were in a budget meeting and you were planning how you wanted to invest, and I told you you're in a public context and you need to show shareholder return next quarter, versus we were in a private context and it's going to be a similar conversation and with all of our portfolio companies, and I basically said, show return 5 years from now or 7 years from now, you would probably make different decisions in each of those. And I think that that's actually pretty powerful because this industry is changing so rapidly that if you're managing quarter to quarter, month to month, week to week, you're gonna make decisions that are not beneficial for the long term. And for these companies to be successful in the future, you have to invest. And you have to invest where the payback is gonna be not even this year, but maybe 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And that might mean hiring more people to do R&D. It might mean new product innovation. It might be M&A. And being able to basically say, forget about the budget for 2020. Think about how we can position this company to be successful over the long term. I think that's really powerful. And I think that's what private equity allows.
We have time for one more question or comment.
So I guess my question is, I mean, it seems like the rebranding of market research as insights is just market branding and marketing BS, right? So how do you explain Elaine's chart that says 88% of companies say, oh, they're all above average, like Nick Wobegon. It's not showing up in terms of the results of the consumers who don't really seem to be getting the benefit or the impact of what all these insights are supposedly providing.
You've each got 15 seconds.
The question is, how to explain Elaine's chart that 88% of companies say they're doing great, but it's not showing up in the consumers. What happened to all the brilliant insights? Are they not insights? Are the brands not using them? The consumers, why aren't the consumers eating the dog food?
My perspective is that consumers you're going to be your harshest critics, right? And so if you feel like you're doing everything you possibly can for the consumer is still going to want more, because I think that's the world that we're living in, which is there is an expectation that everything that it's going to be on demand, it's going to be real time, it's going to be insightful, and it's going to be the best possible experience. And so I think we, rightfully so, and this is what's going to drive the industry forward in terms of improvement, is that you should always be catching up to what the consumer demands. If you feel like you've gotten there, the goalpost has moved further down the road. And so I do think it's a continuous improvement, and it has to be an evolution towards it. Other than that, I'm not sure.
Well, we're going to end it there. But thank you
you.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. John, thank you.